Welcome. Welcome to Moving Forward with Gayle Suzanne. This is a show about pressing through your challenges. We talk a lot about our innermost fears that we have, and I have guests that come on that are experts that can help you move forward, reach the goals that you want to reach, feel better about yourself, and just live a more fulfilling life. Today, I am so pleased and honored to welcome my first guest. This is my third show, Mr. Michael Bloom. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hi, Gayle. It's so awesome to be here with you.
Today, we are going to be talking about caregiving, and it's such an important topic, and it's one that affects so many of us, whatever age we are, either caregiving a parent or caregiving of a child, or just someone in need, or being a relative of a caregiver and how to help them. So today's show, we are going to be dealing with all types of different issues surrounding caregiving. Michael is the best-selling author of the Accidental Caregiver's Guide, Survival Guide, and we're going to be talking about his book and just tips that he has to help people who are in the caregiving role just take better care of themselves and to just press through all of the challenges and issues that they might be having. So with that, I will welcome you again, and I'm just very pleased that you are here. You offer such a valuable resource. You are a valuable resource for people that are going through this. My dad now is in his 80s, and he just got diagnosed with cancer that had metastasized. He's not at a point where I would be caregiving or my stepmother would be caregiving for him. But we all get older and we all have these experiences. And I know that you have had the same experience. And if you can share a little bit about what you've gone through with your caregiving experience.
Sure. Well, I refer to caregiving as it's the caregiving journey. And you mentioned, Gayle, the title of my book is The Accidental Caregiver Survival Guide. And you mentioned the different types of caregivers that are out there. Caregivers caring for an elder parent or a spouse or a child with special needs or some other loved one who may have, one of our, great veterans who've returned from service from overseas with an injury. Millions of people step up to the plate to serve in the role of caregiver. And the reason for the title, again, is most of us are not prepared when it comes to that role. It's some unexpected diagnosis, injury or illness that kind of pulls us in. In fact, I equate caregiving, the start to caregiving is kind of like a swimming pool. I know it's an odd time of the year to be talking about swimming pools because it's so cold as we're recording
Wishful
this today.
Thinking, right?
But, I don't know about you, but before I go into a pool, I like to dip my toe in the water to test the temperature to make sure it'll be comfortable enough for me before I jump in. But when your loved one has a crisis, you don't have time to test the waters. You jump into the deep end. So for me, that came back in 2009. I'm an only child. My parents had me a bit later in life. They were age 42 when they had me, so they were older parents. My mother in 2009 was a 5-year cancer survivor. She had Hodgkin's lymphoma and actually survived treatment, even though it was stage 4B. But on the other side of treatment, she became very physically frail. And my dad, I shouldn't say gladly, but he stepped into the role as the primary caregiver. So for the next 5 years, from 2004 to 2009, he took on pretty much all of the activities for maintaining the household with my secondary support.
Right.
One early summer Sunday morning, August 23rd, 2009, the date will always stick in my mind.
That you remember.
I got a call from my mom. She was somewhat frantic. I lived in Taunton, they lived in Raynham, so we were just about 5 miles apart. And she said, your dad's not acting right. He didn't get her breakfast, he didn't get her meds. My dad was a retired chemist, so he did everything on time, on schedule, by the book. So this was kind of odd. She knew something was wrong. So I threw some clothes on, hopped in the car, rushed over, thinking as I'm driving, I don't know what could be wrong because I had talked to him the day before. In fact, my dad and I usually talked a few times a day. And he had gone food shopping the day before. He said he actually bought an extra cantaloupe it was like a 2 for special, and he was giving me one, so I was going over that day anyway.
To get the cantaloupe,
To get
right?
no, well, it was a part of a visit too, but it doesn't matter. You know, when with kids, no matter how old you are, the parents take care of you. So when I got to the house, I immediately went to check on my father. He was sitting in his home office, and he was kind of slumpy in his chair. Thought maybe he had a stroke, so I called 911. EMTs came out, found out he had a heart rate of 25. They rushed him to the hospital, got treatment. He was having a cardiac failure event, basically. They put in a pacemaker at the hospital. What we didn't know until afterwards, and the event probably started in his sleep, was probably when the heart failure began, and he woke up that way, which is why he wasn't doing the morning routine. But probably over the hours of his sleep where that had taken place, he had oxygen deprivation to the brain, and he ended up with vascular dementia. So basically, that day going forward, he was like a mid-stage Alzheimer's patient, like that. So needless to say, he couldn't take care of my mother anymore as the primary caregiver because he needed a caregiver himself. So I jumped into the deep end, put everything aside, and immediately stepped in to help them both, and that began what ended up being my several-year journey as the primary caregiver for both of them. My dad ended up passing many months later, but then my mother, I stuck around and cared for her, ended up moving in to become her full-time live-in caregiver from that point on. But the reason, and I carry my parents as a legacy to share the message with others about it's easy when you're in the caregiving role, especially those of us, and we can talk a little bit about that in a moment. I have a pretty significant background in health and human services. I know the service system. I'm an only child, used to being independent. One of the syndromes that caregivers have when they step into the role is trying to be Superman or Superwoman and do it all yourself. And that's not a sustainable path. So it's so important to figure out the help that you need and then accept it and to weave it in, because we are much better off on this journey when we can do it as part of a team rather than alone.
Well, that's a big key, accepting the help and accepting the help that people around you. If you're the caregiver and your whole life changed like that, you know, I would think that you would become Superman, and then you get burnout, and then it's like, well, what happens now? So can we just go back to when your dad got ill? You were living in your own home, I assume. You had a job. You had an active life. So how was that whole process with you eventually moving in? Did you have to leave your job? Because there are a lot of people I know that have to caregive, have their own family, their own job, their own life, and to meld everything together is a challenge.
It is. Well, here's one of the interesting things. I believe everything happens for a reason. And a couple months before this happened with my father, I actually had been laid off. Because this was 2009, and this was the time of the Great Recession. And I had accepted a role with a new organization and part of changing in my career path. And it was a newly created position. It was one of the first eliminated, the downturn. So I was in the process of actually exploring consulting at that time. And it's along that journey that we actually met later on.
Yes.
And doing that. But then my dad's illness happened. So, but I did end up shifting out of my home. It was a new way of thinking. So instead of thinking about trying to get a new full-time job, I did need to change my lifestyle with that. And actually, more so than the professional lifestyle was really the setting aside of the personal lifestyle.
Absolutely.
In fact, one of the things I found when I was in the midst of caring for both of my parents was I would get the Sunday night blues. And I talked about this for a while with others when I was running a caregiving power hour for a while on Sunday evenings. The reason I got the Sunday night blues, most people get the Sunday night blues because the weekend's coming to an end and they're returning to work the next day. I got the Sunday night blues because I wasn't returning to work the next day. And what I saw in my week was medical appointments, food shopping, medication adherence monitoring, bathing, all the things that were needed for maintaining the household, but there was nothing in my schedule that I had to look forward to. And that was another thing that I talk about that's really important. That it's easy when we're walking hand in hand with our loved ones through some of the scariest times that you'll ever go through. And it's very easy to set aside your own needs and be all in.
Yeah.
But again, that's not a sustainable pathway.
So you work with clients, and is that the number one problem that they see in their life if they're caregiving, full-time or even half-time? Because if you're making supper for your own family and you're doing everything you have to do, and then caregiving, it's burnout, because the first thing that goes is lunches and dinners with friends, your movie night or whatever, things that you do for yourself. I'm sure the first thing that gets cut out of people's lives. So,
your hobbies, and I tell you, even if you have opportunities to do things, and I found with clients too, we even get to the point of saying, okay, well, let's schedule and we'll do something. Not unusual, the first time you engage in activity that could be fun again, you get the help that you need to stay with your loved ones. You can go out and do something that you enjoy. Then you experience guilt, because now I'm out having a good time, which is foreign, feels foreign at this point, but the loved one I'm caring for who's dealing with pain or other whatever they're dealing with in their life is not able to do that. So we try to work through those things too. But I think the big thing is that actually is not the number one challenge. The number one challenge I found is being able to get the help you want when you need it. So, and because a lot of, I was an only child, which was a blessing and a curse. So the blessing was I didn't have siblings to fight with or to argue with over how the caregiving should go with my parents and decisions that were being made.
Which is, I'm sure, a huge issue.
Huge issue that I deal with all the time with folks. And again, understandable, because we are all opinionated. We all have our thoughts about what is right in the path. Most of us come from it from a good place, but we always don't see eye to eye, and people don't know how to navigate those difficult discussions, because again, you're talking about really frightening situations. Right. I mean, literally life and death decisions. Yeah. And what happens then? Fear emerges, anger emerges, and who do we lash out at most comfortably? The people that we're related to. Right? So that's understandable, it comes up. So that tends to be one of the major frustrations, is other family members not stepping up to the plate. In fact, I had one client that referred to a sibling as a deadbeat brother. Okay,
Eek.
so and how do we, change that feeling? Because we can't control what other people do. We can only control what we do, and how we react to situations. So putting so much energy into being upset about the actions that you believe somebody else should take is really taking away from some of the important things that can help you kind of stay grounded and find the help that maybe you need from other places that would be available to look at, set those goals. So that's really a key consideration to think about.
That's very true. And just getting upset about other people, it takes energy, and it gets you even more burnt out and more frustrated, kind of diversion from dealing with the person that you have to be the caregiver for. But it's everybody's human, and things happen.
You do. Do you mind if I share a story, because it just it just came to me? I had one client I was working with, and her father had a form of cancer that ended up not being curable. He had been battling cancer for a while, and she's not the one that referred to her brother as deadbeat. Her brother was very involved. But the father was in the hospital, and basically the brother was the one that was in the decision-making role as the healthcare proxy, although the dad still fully had his marbles, so he could make his own decisions. But he was not, the father had gone through a lot of treatment, did not want to go through any more treatment to delay what he felt was the inevitable. She was having a hard time dealing with this decision because she wanted to fight, and she was very upset that her dad was giving up the fight. She was also very health conscious and was a nutritionist and a health trainer. And her brother was the opposite of her in terms of healthy eating all of these other things. So she would bring in healthy snacks into the hospital for Dad and things that she thought would be sort of naturally kind of curative for him.
Yep.
And the brother would bring Dad donuts. And this would grate her. So when they were in the hospital room with Dad, she would talk about the arguments that would take place between her and her brother over these times. And Dad at this point had weeks to live, but they were spending their time with arguing. And she felt like she was being disrespected, insulted. We were able to talk that through a bit with the fact that you're bringing these things in and kind of demanding potential weight. What's another way that you could approach this? Because none of us like to be given a directive about what we should do or how we should eat.
Right.
But she felt very powerless in this situation. She felt like her knowledge of food and mineral benefits was the only thing in this horrible situation where her dad was dying that she could have some sense of control over. So we hashed out a way for her to approach her father that would honor him but also honor her needs. So she had reported that she ended up having a conversation with him, that she understood and respected his decision, and why she was bringing in the healthy food and snacks, and that they were still going to be there. She wasn't going to try to twist his arm to eat them. She was going to continue to bring them because she loved him, and she, again, expressed apparently a very tearful way. This was the only way that she felt that she could contribute in this moment in this way that was meaningful. If he chose to take them, they would be there in a cooler, and if he chose not to, that was fine too. Well, they never had another argument about food. In fact, the brother, Nate, and she agreed never to have another argument about food. That particular day that she had the discussion, the dad, and later on, about an hour later, dipped into her cooler and took a healthy snack out. Wow. But about 30 minutes later, he had a chocolate chip cookie that the brother brought too. So
he made them both happy. Right?
He made them both happy, but the story was they got out of this. Once she was able to share what the purpose was behind that, she was able to release it, and they could navigate to a better place and experience still what was a horrible situation. Wouldn't be them fighting so much.
Yeah, not fighting over carrots and a donut, But it's, and I think you're so right on when you say this is the only thing that someone has control over. And when they know something, that's all they know to do to help. And, to kind of try to let go if there's causing any kind of strife or any kind of uncomfortableness. And it's hard. It's hard.
It's very hard.
One of the things that I just want to talk about a little bit in reading your book that I found it's such a small thing, but it just hit me, was that you write about the caregiver giving other people a list to do, specific items that like a neighbor could do, or if I'm a friend of someone or just someone who cares about a family and someone who's sick, what can I do to help? And generally we ask the question, I would ask the question, what can I do to help? Not be specific, saying I can get your groceries for you, or I could give you, or the person that's ill, a ride to the hospital, or get your prescription, something like that. And you had mentioned about giving somebody, the caregiver giving people a specific list, or the person asking, how can I help? Turning it around and say, can I do this for you? I'm driving right by that store, I'm driving right by the bank, I can do your banking for you. Or that's such a small thing, but I don't think people think about it in terms of
It's very
specifics.
true. Yeah, it's actually a very big thing, because I know for a lot of caregivers, we get into routine with what we're doing, and we're doing a lot, in fact, everything, and in some cases caring for more than one household. And then one thing we didn't mention about caregivers, there are many caregivers caring for more than one person at a time. We have sandwich generation caregivers. We have those caring for an elder parent, perhaps a sick spouse, or a special needs child. So there are many caregivers that have really multiple spinning plates. So they're they're overflowing with activities. We're so overwhelmed with what we're doing, we often don't even have the time to, or think we have the time to stop and be able to think, I don't even know what to ask this person to do. I just keep plowing through. So one of the best things I have found to bring structure to this is to say, over time, I mean, you can sit down and over a few sittings, make a list of all the things you do, but put them into categories. What do you do on a daily basis? What do you do on a weekly basis? What do you do on a monthly basis? And what do you do on an as-needed basis? And you can have these 4 columns of activities and keep adding to them as you think about them, just kind of brainstorm. The beautiful thing about having this list is when somebody asks you how can they help, you now have a menu. We all like to choose items off of a menu. We like choice. And we often don't know what's available unless we review the whole menu. So we stay limited in the things that we think we can help with unless we know all the activities that maybe need, that can use some support with. There's a great benefit to this too. A lot of times we, as the caregiver, if we are willing to give up some things to let others help us, we start to think on our own about, I think this would be good for this person to do. We may put them in gender roles. We may think, well, my brother might be willing to take the car for the oil change, and my sister may be willing to help take mom to, her physical therapy appointment or whatever. We tend to put people into these categories. When you give people a list, they can self-select what they're willing to do based on their own, their own time, talent, and treasure, rather than us assigning. And it really is a very effective tool to do, and it doesn't take a lot of time, put some organization, and you may be really surprised at what you find people are willing to do. Even those siblings you might consider to be those deadbeat family members, when they're given the opportunity to make a choice, they may actually step up to the plate.
Yeah. That's key. And I know for the people who are giving the care to someone else, it's so important for them to say, yeah, I would love some help, instead of the old, I'm bothering you, or you don't have enough time, you have your own life, I don't want to burden you. And the people are asking because they care and they love them, and they want to be able to help. They want to be able to contribute in some way. So, caregivers need to be able to say, I receive your help. And I will take 2 hours off and go to that movie and just kind of unwind, or just, if you can just stay and sit with him for a few hours, or sit with her for a few hours while I go just take a bubble bath and meditate and be quiet and just take some downtime. Because I can only imagine, caregiving is a constant thing. Even whether you're there full-time or part-time or whatever, it's always in the back of your mind, always worry, always concern. So taking those breaks, I'm sure, is very, very important. And for the caregiver to just say, yes, I need some help.
Absolutely, and one of the things, one of the chapters in my book, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping the gun on you, is put chocolate in your pillbox.
Love it.
It's a mantra of mine. And this is really important. The reason I use the pillbox as the metaphor is those of us who are caregivers, pillboxes become part of our lives. At least for me, with 2 parents I was caring for at the same time, I was managing 2 sets of medication. With that, so the pillbox was a constant companion, weekly pill planners. But the idea, the pillbox is really a metaphor for our calendars, and the chocolate's a metaphor for what brings us joy. I'm not advocating replacing people's medications with chocolate, although I prefer believers in chocoholic that chocolate can make us feel better.
Right.
But the idea is that chocolate brings you joy. When we're in the caregiving role, it is so easy not to have things in our calendar to look forward to. And it's vital that we do that on a regular basis.
That's so important. That is so important. Well, I cannot even believe our time is almost up. That flew. You have so much to share, and I am so grateful that you're here, because this is such an important topic. So please leave the audience with your information. And again, his book is The Accidental Caregiver's Survival Guide. It's wonderful. It's a short, very short, nice book, very easily read, and it's got a lot of emotion and a lot of truth to it, and things that people may not think of. So if you have any last words for the
Absolutely.
The
well, thank you so much for the invitation to come and have this dialogue with you. So it's been great fun. For anybody who would like to get more information, I do have free resources available at caregivingwithoutregret.com, and you can get more information about the book there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I am so pleased that you are here, and please get his book. It's a valuable resource if you are a caregiver. And hope to join you next time. This is Gayle, and you can reach me at gayle@gaylesuzanne.com. And have a great month, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Awesome.